Welcome to our Saturday night simulcast. We thought we were going to be doing this like at 4 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon. Didn't happen, as we all know. Purdue
We stop for a 5.5 hour break here, real quick.
We could. I think that would be fitting. But the boiler.
We could have done one afternoon after the first 9 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say I got 2.5 hours of radio time filling in on. I should have called you guys up and seen what your grocery lists were for the call-in show was early today. But Purdue does win 24-17 over Virginia Tech. This is our Saturday simulcast. It is brought to you by the Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar, everything that you could ever want in a hotel, the 811 restaurant as well. We also remind folks that we do actually have a website that we would love to have you subscribe to. If you enjoy us on YouTube or any other ways that you get our information, we do have a site. There are specials going on at goldenblack.com. We encourage you to join as soon as you can get to your computer. So we appreciate that consideration. All right, guys, Purdue. I don't know, as Mike and I were talking before Brian came on, not necessarily a work of art, but a win, and an important one for Ryan Walters as he goes into week 2 of his regime with an important road victory. Brian, I'll start with you. Just kind of what were your thoughts as you made your way through this game that seemed to never end?
I just think you wanted to see improvement from week 1 to week 2, and I think you did. I think you saw Purdue with a bigger, more robust game plan offensively, more, as I called it last week, bread and butter. They had the ball enough to actually use their playbook more than they did last weekend. I think they figured out some things on third down they could go to that work. I think the defense played really well. Situationally too. I think Ryan Walters, when he went for it on that fourth down in his own territory, kind of walked that fine line between recklessness and aggressiveness, and I think he kind of left them kind of hung out to dry, and they responded. They held Virginia Tech to a field goal, and obviously closed the game out. Didn't give up a point in the second half. I think that was closer to the level of defense Ryan Walters is going to want to implement at Purdue for the entirety of his duration at Purdue. If it wasn't for that very iffy personal foul call at the end of the first half, that would have been 4 fewer points, presumably. Right. They'd have had to settle for a field goal. That's football, though. I thought this was a very redemptive, for lack of a better term, performance by Purdue. When the offense needed to be picked up, the defense did it. When the defense needed to be picked up, the offense did it. When Ryan Walters needed to be picked up, the defense did it. It was just a better performance in week 2 than in week 1. And I didn't think Purdue was that far off in week 1 either.
Yeah, obviously getting the job done. They did not have a third down conversion, I think, in the second and third quarters, but they did when it was important. They certainly did to start the game. The Boilermakers 7 for 17 for the game, but and dominated the game for the most part statistically. 427 yards, 286 for Virginia Tech. Karma, your view on this one? What were your takeaways from that victory for the Boilermakers?
I mean, there's a lot of things that went into this, but if you compare it to last week, to me, I'll put it as simple as possible. I mean, they were better on third down. They started the game 3 for 3 on third down, and they scored. They ended the game on their game-winning drive 3 for 3 on third down, and they scored points. In between, I think they were 0 for 8.
Mm-hmm.
Better. They stayed on the field offensively, which allowed them to run 80 plays, and their defense got off the field for the most part on third down. And Virginia Tech, I think, ran 62 plays. I mean, it's kind of the complete opposite of what happened last week as far as the numbers are concerned. But to me, that's pretty simple. I mean, there were other things. The offensive line was better other than, the short yard situation on fourth down. The running game got going. They stuck with it. They didn't try to get cute and say, well, we're air raid, we got to throw it. They just, they ran the ball well off. Hudson Card made really good decisions on the zone read, when to keep it, when to pitch it. Mockabee was able to get out in space. Tyrone Tracy was able to get out in space. And, I think they're starting, today was a sign. I think they're starting to establish some sort of identity on offense of what they want to be. They're not there yet. They won't be there for a while. And the fact, they got the tight end involved. Garrett Miller was back, but he didn't play a lot and probably shouldn't have with the weather conditions down there. But there were different people that got involved in the offense, and they were in more of a rhythm. They were more in sync. And I think that's probably a byproduct of having a game together and then going through practice and fine tuning some things. So they looked a lot better on both sides of the ball. And when you can do that and get a win, you feel better, and it gives you something to build on going into next week.
Yeah, no question. Max Clare had led Purdue in receiving, had the toughest moment of the day when he did not get on the field, I don't think, on a field goal, but that they made, and then they turned around and missed. But again, a little bit hard to say whether he would have made, because it was kind of like everybody stopped. But a tough part of that game. But certainly, Tyrone Tracy had they had a couple longer touchdown runs. Tracy had 51 yards rushing, a little bit more balance. I thought Card again when they needed him to be big. He did get sacked today. He got hit a few times, but he ran the ball 12 times today, and was under some pressure too. But I thought he did a pretty good job avoiding that. Brian, you look at this now, and you got to move ahead with you got 3 home games. And all of them potentially, with Wisconsin struggling as we record at Washington State tonight. There's 3 games now that you can win. Purdue obviously has to take it, I think, a possession at a time. We're not ready to anoint the Boilermakers as a team that's going to go 4-1 throughout the month of September. But again, it's hard to minimize the importance of just getting this win and being able to come home and start fresh with 3 straight home games.
Yeah, I mean, you just want to keep getting better. And I think seeing results from week 1 to week 2, should reinforce to everybody that, hey, what we're doing is working here, and everybody's frozen. What's going on here?
No, we're good.
Oh, you were just very still. I think that
we're so intent on what you're saying, but go ahead.
I don't even know what I'm saying. As improved as Purdue was from week 1 to week 2, it's not like you've arrived. There's still a long way to go here. You can there's any number of things you can keep getting better at. I think the fact that they kind of found some things offensively, and I think the reason you're able to run the football the way you're able to run the football the back half of this game, or the evening part of this game,
the darkness part,
the back end of the doubleheader, I think reflects the fact that you were able to get in a passing game rhythm, early in the game, and you actually had a defense on its heels. A big part of the reason, as good as Devin Mockabee was last year, and as good as Purdue was, as well as Purdue was able to run the ball at times last year, that's not the case without people worrying about Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Jones. I think that gets overlooked so much. People blame the offensive line when a team's not running well, and oftentimes that's the case. But I think the most important thing about running the football, especially at Purdue with the way these last few Purdue teams have been constructed, is getting a balance established between an effective passing game and then being able to run off that. And I think Purdue's offensive momentum early in terms of the short passing game and the possession passing game, what have you, plus the gravity that Deion Burks probably had coming out of last week, I think really, really helped them offensively. But you can still keep building on that every single week. And I think you'll see them be even a little bit better next week than they were this week when they're not playing in a puddle.
Yeah. Though I guess the field was, Mark Carmin was talking about on the radio network, how after what they say, I got varying reports, 2.77 inches, and then they said maybe 4 inches of rain, which is a lot of rain. Either way, there was a lot of water in that field. It seemed to hold up relatively well, but like Carm, like you said, and probably may have left Garrett Miller on the bench for the rest of the game. Who knows for sure on that one just yet?
Well, who would have thought the second game of the season that Max Clare would lead Purdue in targets?
Yeah.
That tells me that, after that Fresno State game, they really realized that, hey, we got to find ways to just move the chains. And we got to come up with some stuff here that's not, just Deion Burks making big plays. And I think they found a lot of ways to involve the tight end. They found a lot of ways to involve Max Clare being the tight end. Keep in mind, this is a redshirt freshman who is playing in his second college game, who opened the season third on your depth chart. And that was sort of the guy you built a lot of your game plan around today. And I think that really showed a lot of ability to course correct on Purdue's coaching staff's part here.
Yeah. Third of their targets go to the tight ends. Literally, Drew Bibber also got in a little bit. And obviously, Garrett Miller had the one catch they threw to Bibber once it did not complete it. That's an interesting thing from a scheme standpoint. I think it does give Purdue some more options as they go further into the schedule now. And again, a good showing of a little bit more functional offense, Mike, and moving ahead. What do you take on that? But also that the defense putting enough pressure on Grant Wells throughout the course of the game. I thought that Nick Scoutron especially was in there doing the job. I have to look at the statistics here, but did a pretty good job of putting the heat on Virginia Tech's passing game.
Not only Nick, but Jenkins did a good job.
Yeah.
And that's what you need from those two. I mean, Jenkins is a more veteran guy. Nick played a lot last year, but he's in a different role, and a lot more is being asked of him than what there was last year. But those two guys need to be their pressure guys, and they got some sacks, but I think you have to look beyond. Are they touching the quarterback? Are they hitting the quarterback? And then what is their pressure doing to help the secondary? And did Walters mix up his coverages tonight as opposed to last week? Trying to do something different maybe, and realize you can't go all man all the time. He's got to do some different things to infuse the opposing quarterback and help your team out. We'll see how that evolves through the season when they face better offenses. Probably starting with Syracuse next week, and then once you jump into the Big Ten play, you're going to see a whole host of really good offenses. But the defense is better. You get a second half shutout. You keep them out of the end zone. You give your offense a chance, and that's what this is how this team is going to have to play. Yeah. And I think you're going to, for the most part, I don't think Purdue will get its doors blown off in any game. But on the flip side, I don't think they're going to blow anybody's doors off as we go through this season.
Yeah, no doubt. Statistically, right, Jenkins actually had 3 quarterback hurries and a sack. Scoutron actually didn't have any quarterback hurries, did have a sack, 3.5 tackles for loss. Purdue total. Cole
9 tackles for loss.
Yeah, total 9 tackles for loss, like you said. So that's and 3 sacks. So that was definitely a step in the right direction in terms of pressure. Dylan Thieneman led Purdue again in tackles with 7 and had the pick as well, second pick in 2 games. He's already going. It won't be long till he's threatening Stuart Schweigert's record, right? They'll be
Big Ten freshman of the year on defense.
What's that?
Big Ten freshman of the year on defense.
Yeah,
well, he's going to make a lot of tackles this year. Positionally, that's sort of his. Everything gets funneled to him.
No doubt.
It's kind of a backhanded compliment, because when the last line of defense is the guy making your tackles, it usually means that it's 7-8 yards down the field, which is a win for the offense. But it's still an important position, because 7 or 8 yards is a whole lot better than 47.
That's true. That's a true statement. I want you. We're dealing in truisms here. Go ahead, Brian. You had something else.
Kydron Jenkins is playing like a grown man.
Yeah.
Scourton, I think played really well today too. I think both of those guys are really good, but I think Kydron Jenkins through 2 games has been everywhere. And what he did to that offensive tackle on that sack, he made that guy a meme. I mean, that's that's a guy who's not like 6'7", 260, just batting somebody away like a cat toy. He's a linebacker body type playing that kind of hybrid position. And he just pushed that offensive tackle back on his back and went and sacked the quarterback. I mean, that showed extreme explosion, extreme strength, and he's starting to look like an NFL player to me. And so is Skouerton.
Yeah.
I mean, now those are two guys that other teams have to game plan against.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I think that's what we've seen in these first two games is that, when Syracuse puts on the tape now, they're going to have to try to go away from Jenkins and Skouerton or, try to, chip them or do whatever. But those are two guys now. And those that covered Purdue the last couple of years know about Jenkins, and Caraway or Skouerton was always, a guy that had great promise.
Yeah.
But now they're playing a bigger role, and opposing teams really have to pay attention to where they're at on the field and kind of dictate their offense a little bit to get away from them or double team them or come up with something. And that, in theory, should help some other guys potentially make some plays on the defensive side.
And they help one another because you can't tilt things toward one or the other because then the other one will beat you. It's the old Roosevelt Colvin, Chike O'Keefer tandem, but among many others that came after them. When Purdue's had great defensive ends or whatever you want to call these guys, there have been really good players opposite them too, and they kind of help one another. And I think Purdue's got a really good foundation there from a defensive perspective with those two guys, and that defensive line as a whole is pretty solid. The fact Purdue, forced 2 turnovers today, I thought was pretty significant. The fact Purdue's offense still hasn't turned the ball over,
2 games. Yeah,
I'm sure nobody wants me saying that out loud.
Yeah.
But that's, as coaches always say, and probably don't have to say because it's brutally obvious to anybody who's ever watched a football game. But when you win the turnover margin, you have a much better chance to win.
Now you are dealing in absolute truisms tonight. Another one down the pike. It's a good one though.
I have all this wisdom. What am I going to do with it if not to share it with the people?
I know, and that's why you do it. All right, Syracuse. I know, Carm, you're going to start your prep for Purdue Syracuse maybe within minutes. 113-7, they've outscored their 2 opponents. They beat the Colgate-Palmolive 65-zip. Western Michigan 48-7 today.
Did you say the Palmolives?
Yeah, I think I just nicknamed the
dish soap.
Yeah, and Dino Babers, who has been in Ross-Ade Stadium and obviously stole one from Purdue last year in a lot of ways. Not in a lot of ways, they did in a win at the Carrier Dome, but. It will be an electric. I think that's one great thing for Purdue fans. Just this game today, winning it. It's sold out in Ross-Ade Stadium. They'll have another week to finish. They'll put all the finishing touches on Ross-Ade Stadium. The tunnel will all be ready, all that kind of stuff. But it will be a big night in Ross-Ade Stadium next week. I'm not asking you to break down Syracuse, but this is a game that does, every game, like you said, is going to take importance with this team because there are no layups here for the remaining 10 games of the season.
I will tell you regarding last year's game, you can't steal something if it's given to you.
That's true. That's another truism.
I was going to say, Purdue
didn't steal it.
Purdue had that win in its hands, but it had too much Palmolive on its hands. Flipped right through it.
But Purdue gave that game to them last year.
Oh, yes, they did.
That was one where you walked out of the Carrier Dome thinking this is a game that will hold them back from doing something. And I know they have a lot of new faces on this team that were not part of that, but the guys that were involved in that game that are on this year's roster, I mean, that has to still leave a really bad taste in their mouths, how that game ended and all the just stupid mistakes into the game, for the lack of a better term there, that cost them the game. I mean, that was probably the most unraveling that I've seen a Purdue team do in my time of covering the team. But Dino is also 2-0 against Purdue.
Yeah.
Green and Syracuse. And he has a fondness for Ross-Ade Stadium. He has a fondness for Purdue. I think one of his daughters was born in West Lafayette.
Yeah.
Day of one of the bucket games. So there's some history there with him, and he's going to be excited to come back. You know, who's played the better schedule up to this point? I'd probably say Purdue. And, you know, Purdue's going to have a little momentum coming into this. And as you said, it's going to be a sellout. I believe the game on NBC. Is that right?
Yes, it is on NBC.
This Purdue's first appearance on NBC in football?
Well, at home, but not at Notre Dame on the road.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. Well, shows you how I'm
No, I knew where you were going with that one, but I was ready for that one.
So to try to tether together the topics of this game to come and that Syracuse game last year, I think it's really significant for Purdue to have won a game today where you were just playing tennis for a while, where if somebody made a mistake, it was going to change the game. And, you know, Purdue didn't make that mistake. I don't think Virginia Tech made that mistake. Purdue just got the drive it needed after it got the stop it needed. And for Purdue to be in that sort of situation where the game could go either way, and for them to pull that out with all these new guys, I think that's a really valuable experience for teams that are pretty new playing together. And had Purdue, you know, last year at Syracuse just done one more thing right and one less thing wrong, or one more thing right or one less thing wrong, you know, you would have won that game. And I think that Purdue having to basically be perfect, I shouldn't say perfect, but very, very good in that second half when it was kind of a scoreless stalemate, a quagmire, if you will.
Yes.
For them to kind of win that way, to win a close game, I think was really significant.
Yeah, very much so. All right, gentlemen, we're gonna release you. You're done for the evening, at least in terms of Saturday simulcast. Tom Dienhart will be making his way. He had a little bit of unexpected travel, I think, but he's going to be making his way back to West Lafayette. But via
what do you think they all did in that press box for 5.5 hours?
I don't know. They might have played charades. I might have done that. Maybe I don't know. What would you have done for 5 hours?
I don't know. Written the great American novel.
You might have done that. Yeah, I don't know.
Played some angry words.
Yeah. We had, like I said, a lot of fill time today, but again, at the end of the day, Purdue gets the job done and lives to come home with a 1-1 record as it will take on Syracuse next week on next Saturday night. That's when the game is scheduled, assuming the weather is. We're not going to worry about the weather just yet for that one, though. We have seen some.
Is Purdue now? The only 3 games I can remember Purdue having a weather delay. Purdue is 3-0 in Northern Illinois or Illinois State, whoever it was back under Tiller.
Eastern Illinois, yeah, and the great Bob Spoo.
Minnesota against, in Brahms' first year or second year, whatever it was, and now this, right? Can you think of any others?
Yeah, there's a fourth. Miami, Ohio, in 1989. Yep.
How'd that game turn out?
They won.
Right. There you go. We figured
it out.
We figured it out.
Root for Lightning.
Lightning hit section 103 or something, almost killed somebody at Ross-Ade Stadium. If my memory is great. The great Steve Letnich.
If you could just pull a Crash Davis rain delay every game,
they'd be all set.
Purdue's going to win the national title.
Yeah. I heard Newton was telling the story of the Eastern Illinois game, which was from 2007. It was 35 or at least 35-0 at the half. And the Eastern Illinois, remember, it was at half, I think, was when that delay was. And Eastern Illinois.
I thought it was in the second half.
I think it was.
That was right. Minnesota. Never mind.
Yeah, Minnesota was late in the game. But Eastern Illinois cheerleaders went home. They just said, chuck it. We're leaving. So they did not come back. And they played the final half or however long it was without cheerleaders. Curtis Painter threw, I think, 5 or 6 touchdown passes and a 52-6 win. Who could have ever forgotten that one?
Had there been cheerleaders, that game would have turned out very differently.
Very differently, but I thought that was a fun. That might have been Rob Blackman said that was a good story, but it got my attention during the delay today. So, all right, guys. Carm, do you have something? Go ahead.
Well,
What if the cheerleaders made it home to watch the second half?
They might have. But you think about that, that was Bob Spoo and Joe Tiller was Bob was a good friend of Joe Tiller's and Brock Spax, and they tried to treat him nice, but it was the Panthers went down 52-6 in that one. So, all right, guys, we'll put an end to this. Thanks so much. A reminder that we'll have a Saturday simulcast next week. We'll be doing it late, I assume, after that game against Syracuse. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel. Remind you that you watch us on YouTube. Why don't you become a member of goldenblack.com. You can hear you can read what Mike Carmin has to say. You can read what Brian Neubert has to say, Tom Diener, all his coverage as well. A lot going on the site, a lot of basketball still to come too here before long as the Boilermakers starts practice here in a couple of weeks. So have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our Saturday simulcast next week after Purdue takes on Syracuse. Take care, all.